Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Untersee, and I am a consultant here at Region 10. Welcome to our February family webinar. Our topic this month is accommodations and modifications for students with disabilities. We are so happy that you are here today. This webinar is brought to you by Region 10 Education Service Center along with Partners Resource Network. We're glad you could be here, and we are so happy to have Lorna Salgado with us today. Excuse me. She is an inclusive services consultant here at Region 10, and she is going to be presenting for us today. As she gets started, I will drop a link into the chat with the slide deck for today so that you are able to access that and follow along if you would like to. We will have a few minutes for questions at the end, so you can put questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, and then we'll try to get to as many of those as we have time for when we are at the end of the presentation. Jim, do you have anything to share before we get started?
Just to introduce myself, I'm Jim Wright with Partners Resource Network. We are Texas's PTI, Parent Training Information Center. All of our services are free. We are funded by the Department of Education to help families understand and navigate the special education system. And I'm so excited to have Lorna here with us today. I want to have my parents give me feedback on her. They're so excited to listen to everything she has to say. And I always enjoy talking with Lorna myself. So I'm so excited for her to be here.
Okay, Lorna, we're going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I love that it's February, our month of love, and we do love Partners Resource Network. And I also love this topic because it's really real for you guys as parents. And I love helping you understand this for your students. So let's talk about accommodations and modifications, kind of what they are, how it looks on state testing. That's sort of our goal for today. So I want you to take a look. I just started with the funny thing is in law, these things aren't defined, but in the state of Texas, we have some guidance that helps us understand them in our state. So I want you to kind of take a moment and look at accommodations. That changes the how students access. I always think about, I'm wearing an accommodation right now. I'm wearing my glasses. It doesn't change everything. It doesn't change what I'm seeing, but it makes sure that I can see everything appropriately that I need to today. So that's my accommodation for the day. And our students have many in schools, and you probably have some on your students' IEPs. These are things that make school for our students. Any student can have accommodations. You don't need an IEP to have one, but they can be required by through our IEPs, through our ARD committees, our 504 committees. At schools, they have something they call response to intervention or multi-tiered systems of support. Those committees can require them. And our language proficiency committees can also require them. But when we're talking about special education, our committees, our IEPs, are what dictate these are the accommodations that must be. We also, and I kind of gave the keyword, that's how. Changes in what are modifications. That's lowering the academic expectation against to which they're working or to be evaluated. And these are only for students with IEPs. But certainly not all of our students with IEPs have modified curriculum. So we're going to kind of dive in now that we've looked at the definitions and see if we can get a better handle on what that means. And so this is one of my favorite visuals because I like to visualize things. I'm a visual learner. And so when I think about school, so this is a long time ago, I joined a CrossFit gym. And the first day I got there, they said, we're going to do pull-ups. And I said, no. This over here on the left side is a pull-up, a standard. This is what you're supposed to do, pull-up. I said, nope, I can't do that. They said, don't worry if you can't do that. We have these bands that kind of help you out. You're still going to do the pull-up, but the band sort of supports you. It gives you a little help getting up there. And I said, no, I can't do that either. They said, don't worry if you can't do that. We're going to work that same muscle group, but we have these rings hanging from the ceiling. And you can ring row. You actually kind of pull forward on the rings and sort of doing the same muscle group. And when I left that day, I thought, that's education. We have the curriculum that all students are supposed to learn. That's the pull-up. Some of our kids get accommodations. They need something. They still have to do the whole pull-up, but they get some kind of support in doing that. Just like I get the glasses, or some of our students get extra time, or they get visuals or things that support them. Then some of our students, they're working that same muscle group. They're aligned to that curriculum, but they have something that's a little bit different for them, but it's still working the same muscle group, still working those same curriculum goals. And so I kind of like that visual to help us understand what we mean by those. So we said that accommodations change how students are learning. So let's look a little bit about those accommodations. I'm going to move really quickly through these. We have 4 kinds of accommodations that teachers might do. And the thing is, nobody puts this on the IEP in that way. They're not going to say, this is a presentation accommodation. It's just sort of categorizing so you can kind of see that we have presentation, response, timing, and setting accommodations. This little, I'm not going to spend much time here, but I just have to show it to you. This is something called Accommodation Central, and this was put together by the Education Service Center down in the Austin area, Region 13. And the nice thing about it is this is Texas specific. So what you can actually do is go to it and say, okay, my child struggles in reading. Here's some possible accommodations. And it's a great way for teachers and parents to look through. Now, the thing we want to know is just because it could be an accommodation for your child doesn't mean it's an appropriate accommodation. Not every child needs oral administration just because they struggle with reading. So it kind of gives us some things that teachers might try. So I think for parents, it's important to know that this exists as well, so that it sort of helps you know. You can also go by functional need. Hey, my child has trouble with organization and planning, and you can find accommodations for that as well. Some things that might be helpful for a student that has trouble with that. So that might be a student that needs mnemonic devices, and then you can click on it and it actually shows you what it is, who it might be for. So someone with ADHD, it gives you examples and all the way through it. So it kind of gives you what you need there. So I didn't want to spend much time except to show you that exists. It might be something you want to look at. Now, just because it says this is a reading accommodation doesn't mean every child needs it, but it's certainly a place. And you know, we think about, a lot of us are new to understanding what might be appropriate, or what can I ask the teacher if they've tried, and what might be suggestions to work with the teacher on. So it's a great place for both of you to go, both parents and educators, to help understand what might be appropriate for your student. Whoops. So I like to go really fast, apparently. Let's try doing it not with my mouse. Okay. So here's some examples of presentation. That means changing how the teacher presents information. Our kids get things read to them. They get visuals. They have hands-on. They might get previewing of text. Somebody might give them a text summary. They might have special notes or studying guides. It might be sign language, large print captioning, all those things, color coding, mnemonics. These are just ways that we give kids different ways to take in the information, if that helps. So that's kind of what that is. This is just goes to the Iris Center, which tells you more about all of these. So I just left it in there in case you wanted to do more research. Then there's response accommodations. And these are, the other one was text to speech. This is speech to text. So a student can speak and it shows the text. Might be word prediction, giving a student a template, like having them fill in blanks rather than whole things. Having them give verbal answers, draw a picture, use manipulatives to show an answer, all those things, Braille, repeating directions, all of those things change how the student responds. So we can change how we present things and how students respond to things. We can also change the setting in the room a little bit. Some of your children may have these. They may have noise reducing headphones, preferential seating, all of these things. It could be the lighting, could be having their own space or storage. It can be fidgets, could be anything, allowing for breaks in movement. Anything that makes the setting easier for a student is a setting accommodation. And then we also have those timing and scheduling accommodations. Some of your students might have these. Your kiddos might have frequent breaks. They might need extra time. They might need things chunked for them. They might need timers or signals when to change activities or have something finished by. They might get to work on assignments over multiple class periods or something like that. So those are all examples of kind of the 4 types, but on your IEPs, you won't see it called a scheduling or timing accommodation. It's just going to be an accommodation, but kind of gives you an idea of some different things as you think about your child and what you might consider. What are some things that are the most important for my child. All right, so that kind of takes us through classroom accommodations, and then we're going to talk about classroom modifications, and then I'm going to go to state testing. So modifications are changing the what? That's the ring rowing instead of the pull-up. It's still aligned to that curriculum. So it's not like when a student's modified and everyone's doing fractions, it's not like the student's not going to do fractions, but they're going to do it at the level, whatever's aligned, the skills that lead up to that grade level instruction is what they're going to be working on. So they actually change what your student is expected to master. And the way they do it is it might be less material. So sometimes we can take away some of the work and we're modifying. Sometimes we can take away some work and it's just an accommodation. It kind of depends on what you're taking away, kind of if we're eliminating some curriculum pieces. I mean, I always say your child's going to get the breadth of the curriculum. Modifications sort of adjust the depth. How deep do we go? They might learn material that's a little bit below grade level. They might be tested over easier or less complex problems. So for some of our students, when you get older, those sentences get really long that they're working on in reading. And sometimes giving them less complex sentences with less complex vocabulary is what they need to understand the content. And so that's when a modification would come into place. When you're in an IEP meeting and you're making the decisions, do we modify curriculum for the student? So if your student needs modified curriculum, that's got to be not just someone says, and I think we should modify, but what data do we have? So it should always be data driven and it should be individualized. It should never be every child with an intellectual disability has modified curriculum or every child with autism has. That's not true. It should always be, what does our data tell us? How's this child doing? In what areas do they need to just have some heavy accommodations? And what areas do they need to be modified? And what does that look like? So that's always our decision individually for the committee. And our committees have to keep in mind that it's not always the right choice for every child to have modified curriculum. Sometimes it sounds nice. Oh, it'll keep them from getting frustrated in school. I don't want them to be frustrated and hate school. Well, I don't either. But we also have to know that there can be adverse implications. When students only get below grade level content, our research, not ours at Region 10, but the body of research says that those achievement gaps don't close like we want them to. And it's okay if we need to give them modifications. That may be what a student needs. But we don't just want to go, oh, yeah, they're reading below grade level, we're going to modify everything. Well, what do we need to modify into what level is the question of the committee, because we don't want to grow the gap for the student. We want to close the gap. And sometimes modifications help with that. But we also know that once we get a student on a modified curriculum, and I'll tell you, this starts to happen a lot in second and third grade. If we're on modified curriculum for a long time, we never quite close gaps and that gap tends to grow. So we want to be cautious before we do it, but certainly it needs to be done for some of our students. All right, that was a lot to take in. I know, because I only have 30 minutes. So I hope you're breathing. Here we go. We're going to keep plunging and then I'm going to take your questions. But those were all, what do we do in the classroom? So all of those are things that teachers do during their daily lessons to support your child. Oh, what about the STAAR testing? So I don't know how many of you out there have third graders through high school, but STAAR testing starts in third grade. So if you have a child in early childhood, pre-K, kinder, first or second grade, you're not dealing with STAAR, but they will be there at some point. So I think this is still applicable to you to kind of understand, because the other thing is we want to know what is it that we're doing in class that relates to what can they have on the test. And I'm going to be real clear, and I'm real clear with educators when I tell them this. Just because something isn't allowed on STAAR doesn't mean it might not be appropriate for class. For example, you can't read the reading test to a student on STAAR. Reading cannot be read to them. But could we read a reading passage to a student in class? Absolutely, especially if I wasn't trying to figure out their ability to read the passage. If it was to get content, why wouldn't I read the reading to them so that they understood what was being said, or at least had that read to them? So just because something is on STAAR doesn't mean we can't do it in class. So I want to make sure that that's why on your IEPs, most of them, There are two different sections. There's a section about instructional accommodations, and there's a section about STAAR accommodations. So STAAR has three parts that they can accommodate for. The first one is accessibility features. Then there's locally approved. That means campus, in your meeting, you approve it. And there's some that have to be approved by TEA. So let's talk through each of these three types of supports on STAAR. The first one is accessibility features. Now, this is for any student. You don't need an IEP to get accessibility features. You don't have to be 504. You don't have to be IEP. Any student who regularly benefits from these during their instruction can use them. And there's some types of supports, and I know you're going to say reading assistance. I'm going to show you what I mean. So this is actually going to a document it's called the Educator Guide, but I think it's to help you guys understand. I don't have a problem showing it to you. It's a TEA document. It's public. It's not a private document. But I'm going to go to the Accessibility Educator Guide, and I'm going to show you what it shows down here in this wonderful little chart on page whatever. Oh, where is it? That's not what I wanted. Oh, please. That's not what I wanted. Why did it go there? Let's see. Maybe I hit the wrong button. Educator Guide. Yeah, I clearly hit the wrong button. There we go. So on our Educator Guide, it's going to give me this beautiful, what are the supports that anybody can get if they use them in class? And so there are some language supports like translating test directions, a bilingual dictionary, if that's something your student reads or needs. Some of your children will get reading or signing the constructor. That's the writing items. So when they have to write, someone can read sort of the prompt to them. Third graders can have a word or a question read to them on math. So it kind of gives you what's allowed. Any child can have scratch paper. Any child can read the test out loud to themselves. They would have to be in a room by themselves probably, but any child can have sticky notes. Any child can, if they need an amplification device to hear, they can have all of these features that are on the online test. They can have large mouse pointers. There's all these things that any student can get. So any student can get an individual or small group administration of the test. The question is, do they regularly benefit from that during instruction? So STAAR is really about what does it look like during the real instructional day? And if so, then they would benefit from that in their testing situation. So there's accessibility. That's for any and all kids who need them. Then we have some things called locally approved designated supports. So these are all the things that your ARD committee, your IEP team can decide. So, but the thing is, there are rules, there's eligibility requirements. So when I pop one up, it actually shows me which assessments it's on. So I did oral administration, oral and signed. So if your child needs something read to them, the test, it shows you if they're taking STAAR or STAAR Spanish, what can be read to them. So it kind of gives you, so notice you can't have the reading read to you, okay? But there's parts of this says reading the test questions. You can read the test questions in reading, so kind of can do that. So it gives you some of the things that you can do. It tells you who's eligible. So for this, they would have to routinely and effectively use it. So it has to be something they use all the time. And it has to meet one of these criteria. They have to have dyslexia or documented evidence of a reading disability. That doesn't mean they have a learning disability in reading necessarily. It means documented evidence of reading difficulty. Or they're an emergent bilingual and they take STAAR in English. So any of those students, and then it talks about who gets to make the choice and gives you examples of what that might look like and all these things to think about. But that's sort of our list of what you can get. So basic transcribing means that the student writes it or uses, could be word prediction, it could be speech to text, and then it's transcribed into the system for them. Calculation aids, content and language supports, I'm going to show you a little bit in a minute about. All of these things are things that students can use. A lot of your students, the things I see the most are oral, spelling assistance, supplemental aids, calculation aids, and content and language supports. But each of them, when you click on them, and they are clickable, goes to the exact page to tell you about that. Now, remember, the first one you're always going to see is this one: routinely, independently, and effectively uses it during classroom. You can't use anything on STAAR that hasn't been shown to be effective in the classroom. So I get a lot of people that call me and say, oh, he struggles to read. I think we should just add, oral administration. Well, does your child get that all the time? Because they should be getting on the test, if it's allowable, things that they get all the time. So we shouldn't be making it up. If that child does not need their calculator and they're in the 5th grade all the time, they don't need it on the STAAR test. If that's not something they're using each time that they're, needing to calculate, then that wouldn't be something they would use. All right. I know I'm going fast. Then, so those are ones that the ARD committee decides you're good to go. There are some that you have to get TEA approval on, and that doesn't mean that you can't have it. It just means you have to get TEA approval. So the other one, the local one can do basic transcription. Then there's one that's complex transcription, that's more than just the student using technology to help them. It might be if the student needs an extra day. And by the way, I didn't say STAAR used to be timed. It is no longer timed. Students can have the whole day, but we have some students for whom they need a lot of breaks, or some of our students being on the screen too long is too much. And so breaking it up into a couple days is more helpful for our students. We have some students for behavior reasons or attentional reasons that, even if they could do it in 3 hours, that's too much for one day on the screen for them. So if that child needs extra day, but remember, they're getting that all the time. Do they need these things all the time during the year? A math scribe is actually somebody writing for the child. So this could be for a student that can't use technology and can't write to figure out, their calculations, and can't use maybe a calculator for whatever reason. So math scribe, kind of rare. Then there's other. The only other that I've heard of recently is they asked for some extra support for a student who needed lip reading because they couldn't do the online because of that. So if you have something where there's an other that you think doesn't fit into these are ones that your school has to submit it to TEA. And by the way, it doesn't even have your child's name on it. It can't. It just says, here's the situation for this child. Here's what we've tried. Here's why we're asking for this. And TEA approves or denies it, but it does not have your child's name. We don't send their medical data and their doctor's reports. It's just the information that TEA would need to say whether it's approved or not. And they overwhelmingly approve a lot of them, because usually when folks are at this point, the child really needs it. Okay, so we talked about all of the accommodations on STAAR. Are there modifications? No, STAAR can't be modified, and that's federal law that we can't modify a state test. It can only be accommodated. But all these designated supports are there to students who receive content modifications. So if your student receives content modifications, they're more than likely eligible for content and language supports, which is one of the accommodations. And so if your child gets these things in the classroom, then they would get content and language support. So content and language supports actually define some of the vocabulary, show a picture to the child. Sometimes in reading, it might say in paragraph 4, the author's main idea was, and it'll actually read paragraph 4 to them. So if those are things that the teacher does, like instead of just giving them a formula chart, the teacher might write on their problem, here's the formula needed to solve this. Those are the kinds of things that content and language supports do on state testing. And I went ahead and linked, that came from that same guide I showed you a minute ago, the accommodation educator guide. So that is in there, but I wanted you to have it so that you could kind of see, if these are things the teacher does, my child's probably eligible for content and language supports on testing. Woo, I feel like you have just drank from a water hose, not a fire hose, drank from a fire hose, right? That was a lot of stuff. So take a moment, breathe it in. I'm going to do it with you, and tell me what questions that you have. Or Sarah, do you have anything for me yet?
I don't have anything yet, but I do have it pulled up. So if anybody has a question, please feel free to put that in there. We just got one question in the Q&A. Lorna, can you see that, or do you want me to read that?
No, I can see it. I can pull it up. When considering test accommodations for a child taking an industry-based certification, the IBC, as a required final exam in a gen ed course, would the students' needs taking the IBC be considered the same as a classroom assessment or like a standardized? What a great question. Good job. So some of our kids in high school take things called industry-based certifications. So it's part of their career and technology education. It's part of their graduation. So usually if it's just their final exam from the teacher, it should be whatever's allowable in class. So the things that I listed for STAAR are only for STAAR. Now, here's the trick when you start talking about industry-based. They can't modify an industry-based certification. So I'm going to think of it this way. We can't, somebody who's going through a cosmetology program, they can't skip hair coloring. They would have to have that piece. We couldn't say, oh, they don't have to do that, and we're still going to certify them. What they could do is possibly have the accommodations of things read to them. So the kinds of things they would get in class and they were getting are allowable on those IBCs, but to actually modify them, no. But they would be the same as classroom assessments. That was a great question. Then I have the question of, oh, that's a great question, Melody. I'm so glad you asked that. Can accommodations and modifications be added or changed in the middle of the school year? I'm just going to say anything can be added or changed in the middle of a school year, whether it's an IEP goal, an accommodation. And honestly, that's sometimes when it happens is teachers end up, something's on an IEP and they end up learning that child and going, they really don't need that anymore, but I think this is what I've been doing that's more helpful. So we don't add accommodations unless we have data to show that the child benefits from them. So that's the big key. So we don't just go to the candy store and go, that sounds good, that sounds good, that sounds good. Does my child benefit from it? And in that case, we definitely want to add it to the IEP. So yes, please don't feel bad about calling your school and saying, hey, I want to talk about this accommodation. And what they might say is, can we try it for a little bit first and then see if we need to add it to the IEP? And that's great parent and school work together there. Does an ARD have to be called to make accommodations in the middle of the year? No, that can, okay, let me give it a no but, a no but. It is not required by law if you change an accommodation or to do that. If you modify that might be because you might be changing the course. Most of the time accommodations can be changed through the amendment process, but not all districts do that. Some say we want to have a meeting every time. So it's really up to how your district or charter handles those meetings. But does it have to be? No. Will it be sometimes? Yes. And if you feel like it needs more discussion, then, hey, can we talk about this? And then it's working and we'll just add it in the amendment. If you feel like it needs more, or the teacher does, then certainly we want to have a meeting and talk that through. Y'all ask good questions. I like it. Anything else? I know I'm at my time limit.
Yeah, I had a question about the extra day on the STAAR. Does it have to be on one of the designated STAAR testing days of the school for the extra day, or?
So it does, but the nice thing is STAAR has huge windows now. So they used to be like reading language arts had to be on X day. And so your extra day had to be, pretty much the next day. But now there are windows because it's all online. So your extra day doesn't have to be the next day. So I could do it on Monday and Wednesday. That's a great question.
Okay.
It just means extra day. It doesn't say must be the very next day.
And that's a pretty
big window to do it in. Yeah.
And that's a pretty recent change, correct?
It is. It's this year's change. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Lauren, I think we have time for one more question that just came through in the chat. And while you're answering that, I am going to launch a poll for our participants to answer just to get some information on how you enjoyed today's presentation. So if you would answer that for us, we would be very appreciative. I will also drop another link in the chat to our March webinar, which will happen on March 1st, and it will be again at 12 o'clock. And the topic for March is resolving issues, how to stay cool when conversations get heated. So another great topic.
Shannon, that's a great question. Her question is how to ensure that accommodations are given. What's the accountability process? That is a great question. So teachers have to document in some way. There's no one way that they have to do it, but they have to document in some way that it's done. Some teachers write it on a lesson plan, some put it in a Google form. So you can ask, how are you documenting that? On that site that I showed you that was Accommodation Central, it actually has some forms that teachers can use. So if your teacher says, I don't know what to do, because truthfully, y'all, we have some green teachers out there. I know because I am the parent of a green teacher. But if you go to accommodations, there's also, if I pick one, I'm just going to pick one. It doesn't matter what I pick. On how to implement, it'll say monitor the student's progress, and it actually takes you to forms that teachers might use. So I can actually access a monitoring form and say, here's how I'm going to monitor its effectiveness. I also have used ones from Stetson and Associates. So all kinds of things can be used. So you can see this is just one that a teacher uses to show how routinely is used is effective. What did I do? What date did I do it? So it doesn't have to be that detailed. That's a great form, but as long as they're documenting it somehow. And as a parent, you should be able to ask the teacher, how are we documenting the use of accommodations? I mean, that's a fair question.
And then an answer I give to this question that comes up a lot with people calling us is that you can create your own data at home. And this can be, it doesn't have to be a library book, but it can just be a check mark, just like that form was. And this can be like a conversation starter for your child, because we need to teach our children to learn how to advocate for themselves. And then knowing that they're entitled to these accommodations to be successful, because accommodations can follow you all the way through college sometimes, that they need to learn how to request and advocate for themselves. So when they get onto their own in college, they have that skill set to be able to do that for them. And so that's a good way to empower your children to communicate with you about that and not have it be a high stress situation.
Oh, I like that. Good answer.
Okay, we will go ahead and wrap up. Again, before you jump off the Zoom, if you wouldn't mind answering those poll questions, we would be very appreciative. And we hope that we see you next month. Today's webinar was recorded and it will be available on the Region 10 website. That will be available. It usually takes a week or two for that to get posted. But if you would like to go back and watch this later, it will be available. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.